Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of TI Talks. I'm Ricki and today I am joined by my lovely deputy editor Anne-Marie Corvin. Welcome to another episode, Anne-Marie.
Thank you for having me, Ricki.
We're going to be joined later by two specialists to help us discuss everything about the national public data breach that happened last week that we have written about on TechInformed. We'll be joined by Matt Berzinski from Ping and Lisa Sotto from Hunton Andrews and Kurth to give us the legal perspective, which is very interesting, so stay tuned for that. But Anne-Marie, you've been away at Black Hat, so we haven't seen you for a long time. The viewers have missed you. They've all been in my DMs saying, when's Anne-Marie back? How was Black Hat?
It was very good. It's very informative. I was warned to switch my phone off, leave my laptop behind. Apparently it's the most hostile network in the world. I don't know how much truth there is in that, and I think they've got a bit wise to that, and it's a lot more secure. I did put my phone on airplane mode a bit, but who knows? It's too early to say whether I've been breached or not. I don't know if there are people lurking around my devices, so watch this space.
Now we are thrilled to be joined by Lisa Sotto, the queen of breach herself, a partner at Hunter Andrews Kurth. And for anyone watching, we do apologize for the poor video quality. Unfortunately, Lisa has had some connection issues. Nevertheless, Lisa, welcome to TI Talk.
Thank you very much, Ricki. I'm delighted to be here.
So we had some pretty major news last week about the national public data breach, billions of lines of data, and potentially, hundreds of thousands of people's social security numbers breached on the dark web for free, no less. And actually, Anne-Marie had quite an interesting question to start things off.
Yeah, Lisa, I just wondered what the lawyer's role is in the event of a cyber attack.
That's a very good question, and one that I'm asked actually quite a bit. The lawyers essentially act as choreographers, if you will. So what we try to do at the outset of an incident is we try to protect confidentiality and legal privilege around a forensic investigation around the ransomware negotiation. So we will actually retain, on behalf of our client, we will retain the forensic investigation firm under legal privilege. We'll do the same with the ransomware negotiator. And we work very closely. We'll work hand in glove with those experts who will really help us understand from a forensic perspective what happened, where the threat actor was in the system, what data they might have taken, and then how to restore operations, how to remediate the network. And then the ransomware negotiator or extortion negotiator will liaise typically with the threat actor on behalf of the company. We will also work very closely with often an external communications firm to help regain trust in the company, because that trust will be eroded after this sort of an event.
I wonder if you could just give our listeners and viewers, just from your understanding, kind of like an overview of what happened with the national public data situation. Like, what's your interpretation of events there?
Well, like many companies, they have suffered a cyber attack. It appears that a vast amount of data was stolen from their system and, as you noted, posted online for free. So we don't know exactly what happened. That hasn't been announced precisely, but my guess is this is a criminal actor who is in it for financial gain, completely financially motivated and looking to make some money off of the data, although the posting for free throws a curveball into that analysis. But this is very typical. There is no industry sector that is exempt from these sorts of attacks. We see the financial sector, the healthcare sector, tech sector, hospitality, retail, you name it. Everybody has been hit. Now, the rub here is that they're a data broker. And so they have vast, vast amounts of information. It's not just transactional data of what you bought in a retail store and your credit card number. This is really a very sensitive data. My understanding is that a huge number of social security numbers were compromised in this incident. Now, social security numbers can be used to commit identity theft. Unlike credit cards, unlike some other data that might be stolen, like just contact information, name, email, phone, postal address. Social security numbers can be used to open new lines of credit. So we do worry most specifically about social security numbers having been compromised.
When a company like national public data is compromised, what are the immediate steps that they should take upon discovering a breach?
What they should immediately do is get a forensic investigation firm involved. Internal information security folks are talented, but they don't do this thousands of times a year. So there are specialist firms that do nothing but come in to help after an event like this, and they know exactly what to do. They know what the playbook is. It's tried and true, and so they will figure out where in the system the threat actor has been, what data might have been stolen, and then how to restore the network and the data after the fact. We also would typically see a company hire an extortion negotiator. They won't know on day one if they are able to restore their own data and rebuild their systems. So typically companies start the negotiation and then make a determination a few days in or a week in as to whether or not they can get their own systems back up and running. Other experts that you might bring in, that they might bring in are, for example, an external communications firm that would help the company to restore trust in the company and get the message out about the actions the company is taking to reassure the public and business partners. And of course, legal really needs to be brought in very, very early in the game to help with all of this and also pull all the threads together. You can see there are a number of different silos that need to be handled, and often the lawyers just sort of bring it all together.
And in terms of payment and making that decision, whether you pay or whether you don't pay, legally, what's the viewpoint on that?
So it's a tough question for most companies. They don't want to make a payment to criminal actors, but they might have to. So the question that they will ask themselves is, number one, if there's ransomware deployed, can we rebuild our systems? Can we restore our data? Do we have backups that are clean and viable so that we can get our system back up and running again, so that we don't have to rely on the threat actor's decryption key? And then the other question to ask is the data that was stolen so deeply sensitive and problematic that it could really impact the operation of the company? Now, that's an interesting question because in many cases, the company will have notification obligations anyway because the data has been stolen. So that alone will trigger the requirement to notify affected individuals or business partners. So it may be that it doesn't matter at that point that they can suppress publication of the data on the dark web. They're going to have a notification obligation anyway. Now, the one real rub is to the extent you are dealing with a sanctioned threat actor, meaning an actor who is on a sanctions list by a government, you are not permitted to pay. So if you're dealing with a threat actor who's sanctioned or with a sanctions nexus, like a sanctioned country, they might have a server in a sanctioned country, then you are not permitted to pay. There are criminal penalties that attach to making that.
I didn't know that.
What about their obligations to notify regulatory bodies?
And that differs by country. So I can talk quickly about the United States. In the US, we have 54 data breach notification laws. We have the 50 states plus the US Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, DC, and Guam have breach notification obligations, meaning that to the extent somebody's sensitive personal information was compromised by a threat actor, was accessed or acquired by a bad guy, then you have to notify the individual. There are also in those laws, in many of them, most of them, there are requirements to notify the state attorney general or other state agency. And then at the federal level, there are myriad notification obligations. If you are a healthcare entity, you have to notify the Department of Health and Human Services. If you're a financial institution, you need to notify your federal financial regulator. So it depends on what kind of company it is and what sector, but there are many notification obligations to government. And we're about to see a new regime in the United States the law has passed and we're waiting for regulations to be finalized, such that to the extent a company is critical infrastructure, falls within one of 16 different industry sectors. If an event warrants it, then there is a reporting obligation within 72 hours, and then within 24 hours of having paid a ransom. I'll tell you one other very important reporting obligation while I'm at it. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC in the United States, now requires, as of December 18th of this past year, 2023, SEC requires that to the extent you have a cyber event that you deem to be material, then you need to report publicly in a securities filing within 4 business days. So that's very aggressive timing-wise, and you are telling the world. So that's very different from telling a regulator who will generally keep it confidential. This is telling the entire investing world.
I'm all out of questions, Anne-Marie. Do you have any more?
What would you say is the biggest mistake that companies tend to make when they find out that they've been attacked?
I think the biggest early mistake is that they hear something about something going wrong in the system, and they ignore it. So sometimes there is truly so much noise from alerting services that sometimes it's hard to identify the wheat from the chaff. And you hear a lot about alerts in your system and you ignore them, or you get a note from law enforcement and you ignore that. Or sometimes reporters call and say, we understand that your data has been stolen or that your company's been attacked, and they ignore because everybody wants to stick their head in the sand when something like this happens. So the key is to immediately act on any kinds of tips that this sort of thing has happened. And I'll also just note that we've seen some statistics that show that the majority of the time, companies do not find out themselves that this sort of attack has occurred in their systems. They hear it from external parties. They hear it from law enforcement. They hear it from their customers. They hear it from media and reporters. And then they go and investigate, and lo and behold, yes, their systems have been attacked.
Increasingly, the hackers are actually contacting journalists to say that they've attacked firms. Have you got any advice for us?
Yes, do not engage. And, I would say it is hard for companies when journalists engage with the bad guys and give them the press that they so desperately want, because it's good for the threat actors to have their story told by journalists like you.
Noted. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Lisa. That was honestly really, really interesting. And I've learned so much. I don't know about you, Anne-Marie, but I'm like plethora of new knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you speaking to me today. Thank you.
Now, for a slightly different perspective, Anne-Marie and I are joined by Matt Berzinski, who is the Senior Director at Ping Identity, which is an identity management software. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Ricki, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Matt, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, I'm a Senior Director of Product Management at Ping Identity, and I oversee a lot of our product development for security and convenience and access products across all of EMEA. What we focus on a lot, as you kind of mentioned, was providing security in a seamless and frictionless way for your customers, your employees, and even your business partners.
We're talking about the big national public data breach that happened last week. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, how has that introduction of AI changed that landscape, and what new threats are emerging because of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And as an American who lives in the UK, seeing that Social Security numbers were breached is near and dear to my heart. AI is the rage. Everybody talks about AI. Where we sit, we see AI being used by nefarious actors to increase their ability to perform account takeover. So if you think about deep fakes, you think about social engineering. I read an article the other day where generative AI is much more likely to be able to guess your password based on your 5 previous passwords than a human would be based on pattern recognition or being able to tie social engineering together. I don't know the specifics of this attack, but I would assume it probably came from an account takeover type of scenario, where you used to think about hacking as people in a corner trying to get through some backdoor crevice into a network. Whereas nowadays, they're just walking through the front door because they can guess somebody's username and password, and then they just get in and do whatever they need. Now, was AI used in this breach? I'm not 100% sure. If you think about, if you go out on the dark web, you have phishing kits that are available for $40. So you can just set up a phishing kit and it'll help you generate emails. It'll actually stand up an adversary in the middle website, like a proxy, so that you can give somebody a link and they'll go to that, enter their information in unknowingly, because that's just a proxy to the real website. And then people can gather all that information. Where AI is playing a role in that is that before it was easy to spot phishing emails because they horrible punctuation, didn't make any sense, horrible typing. Now they can actually write emails that are not only very, grammatically correct, but are personalized to you based on social engineering and being able to pull in all that data. So I don't know that AI is a part of that, but what I do know is that it's making it easier for attackers to generate these types of emails to gather personal information.
In large-scale breaches like this one, what other sort of general principles or AI-driven approaches that organizations should prioritize to kind of enhance their detection and response capability?
A lot of times people talk about AI versus AI, and it brings up like Rise of the Machines and Terminator, and it gets really scary. But, I think there is a little bit about that. So you definitely have the nefarious actors leveraging AI to be able to gather information a lot easier. And we do need a response on the other end, right? Because I don't care how good your team is, they need a force multiplier like AI to be able to keep up. And so we do have a few things out there in AI. If you think about it, we have risk detection that can detect anomalous behavior, but it also pulls in a lot of static type of information, like where are you logging in from? What device are you coming from? Is this IP address, scary? Is it trusted? Are there too many logins coming from this IP address? Does it look like it's credential stuffing? That, coupled with, user behavior, what your pattern is, AI can crunch all that information and come up with a risk score of how risky is this authentication from the very beginning. And what that does is that if you see a risky authentication, then you can follow up with strong authentication, right? So you have somebody trying to do something that looks risky. Well, let's go do like some kind of strong authentication, whether that's a push notification to your phone or whether that's a WebAuthn or 502 passkey. Some of these types of technologies that are phishing resistant. And we always talk about, risk and stronger authentication. But the other side of that, because we do have to balance experience with security, is if I know that's a very low risk transaction, like it's coming from the right device, from the right location at the right time, I can get rid of a lot of that extra security. I can make it very frictionless for somebody to get in and still be very confident that it is the right person.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was AI that's a problem or passwords. Google and Microsoft are experimenting with a passwordless future. Do you see that happening in cybersecurity at all? And can you explain how that might happen?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's one that's near and dear to my heart. I've been fighting the password since 2001. I used to work for a biometric company, and I was at a trade show, and I had on the back of my shirt, forget your password, right? Because biometrics are going to take over everything. To your point, when I say AI versus AI, that's not a winning battle because the bad actors are always going to be ahead. Now, we can catch up a lot quicker now with AI, but you need to have other tools in your bag. And passwords, we know, are very weak. People have been trying to get rid of passwords for 25 years now. We are now seeing technology that allows people to do that. One, as you mentioned with Google, Microsoft, and Apple, it's amazing that these three companies have all come together to agree on a standard called passkeys in 502 that allows you to have a non-phishable security token on your device that isn't a password. So that's helping strengthen the authentication. The other thing you need, though, is you need the tools to be able to implement stronger forms of authentication for the right people at the right time. And that requires like a contextual type of user authentication journey so that you know what device they're on, you know what's capable on that device, you know what they prefer, and you can challenge them for that. So that's another thing that we need to think about when we're thinking about combating the fraud that comes from AI.
Do you see a passwordless future happening anytime soon?
I think we're starting to see it more and more. Like if you go to your Amazon account or you go to a lot of your accounts, they say, would you like to use a passkey to log on? And so that is, now you're getting the option to use a passkey, and then soon you can retire your password. So passkeys are becoming adopted. I think one of the things you saw was 2 years ago, Apple put out an advert, or maybe it was Google, one of them put out an advert on the Super Bowl that said, forget your password and announce passkeys. So for a long time, it's been security people saying, you need to get rid of passwords, you need to use strong authentication. Now Google and Apple are advertising to the end user, and the end user saying, I need that technology. So now it's a pull. So you're starting to see that happen. And so I think, getting rid of passwords completely, that's still off on the distance, but we're starting to see much more of an adoption of the technology that will allow us to get there much sooner than people.
And then you could probably guess my next question. Are passkeys hackable?
So, I can't sit here and say nothing's unhackable, right? I can't say that, because as soon as you say that, you're going to be proven wrong. But the thing is that passkeys are very phishing resistant, and they are much, much more secure, because your authentication, your authentication credentials and the way you authenticate, your certificate never leaves your device. So whatever they intercept in the middle can't be replayed down the line anywhere else, right? So they're a much, much more secure form of authentication than really anything out there right now, except for like certificates or and passkeys are a form of a certificate, to be honest. But besides certificates, or being able to do a really strong biometric authentication against the server held biometric template.
Great.
I feel like, are we going to see a future where you have to put your finger on your phone and it takes a little prick and then it's a blood sample and then that's the only way to get in?
No, I don't think we're going to get to, what was that? That was in 1984, right? That movie where, everybody had to give their blood sample to get into the building. I don't think we're going to get to DNA authentication anytime soon. And I don't think, even if we do, they would want to be pricking your finger for blood. I think that would be a health issue. They'd have to find a way to do that with just your skin or your sweat. But I don't see us getting there. Really, what I see is the advent of decentralized identity and digital credentials and digital wallets. And I think there's a lot of things to think about, especially when it comes to this breach. This breach was a breach of a massive database of a massive amount of personal information. And that's a huge honeypot for hackers, right? It's like, here's a honeypot of a massive amount of data. So that makes it worth their while to go get that data. Because remember, fraud is a business. They're spending money, using resources to get a return. If all of a sudden all of my data is in my digital wallet, like it is on your driver's license in your wallet, and it's not sitting in a database, and I control who I give it to, and then I control whether they can keep it or not, I can securely authenticate against that, then that reduces this whole attack vector for people stealing personal information. It allows me to trust companies, and it allows companies to trust me, because there's a proven identity in my wallet that the government agency can vouch for, or a bank can vouch for, who's ever issued that identity. So I think there's a lot of things we have to think about, and it's kind of like, let's stop the defense, but let's stop having these big honeypots of information that are attractive to hackers.
Thanks for joining us today, Matt.
Thanks, Ricki. Thanks for having me. It was a great chat, and I look forward to talking more in the future.
Thanks so much. Well, Anne-Marie, I don't know about you, but I have had information overload. Both of those interviews were very illuminating. How did you think it went?
They were both really good. Like, Lisa's often been described as the high priestess of privacy and
Queen of
breaches. I would say she's also the mother of mitigation. And it was really interesting to kind of learn what she was saying about the press's role in all of this, and how hackers can manipulate the press to get their presence out there and get their names known, and you can unwittingly play a kind of role in helping hackers by cooperating too much as a journalist. So that's definitely something I'm going to bear in mind.
Have you ever been contacted by a hacker?
Not yet, and certainly not on a either personal or a kind of professional level. Not yet. Hopefully never.
Well, now if anyone does contact you to tell you that they've hacked somebody, you know what to do.
Yeah, well, I definitely will have. I'd be on the phone to Lisa, that's for sure.
There you go.
And then in terms of what Matt was saying about passwordless futures. I thought that was really interesting and maybe not as far away as we think. Although I do think it'll be the larger companies that adopt that first, because it sounds like with passkeys, there still needs to be quite a lot of management involved in the networks.
Well, lots to think about, and I'm sure that all of our listeners are going to go away and change all of their passwords to fingerprints or face recognition now. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us for another episode of TechInformed's TI Talks. I've been Ricki. That's been Anne-Marie. Thank you again to Matt and Lisa for joining, and we'll see you again next time. Until then, stay informed.